I was doing a job I loved. I mean, I was running Smith Barney. And here I was, I could stop doing what I thought was right and keep my job, or I could keep going and lose my job without knowing it was going to turn out well.
You grew up in South Carolina.
I did.
Ran track.
Yeah.
A little bit.
A little bit.
Studied journalism in
Yes.
college at UNC Chapel Hill. Then you get your MBA at Columbia.
Right.
What made you go into finance?
I didn't so much mean to go into finance as I meant to move to New York City. Growing up in Charleston, South Carolina, going to school at the University of North Carolina, this idea of New York. And then when I was ready to graduate and my father said, I forbid you from moving to New York, it's too dangerous. I said, okay, I'm going to New
Ups
York.
the appeal immediately.
And had a couple of journalism offers, but there was Wall Street, and it was the late 80s, and Wall Street was hot. And I thought, you know what? I'll go into finance for a couple of years and then become a business journalist, and that never happened.
It's so funny. I ended up studying economics. My mom was a journalist, is a journalist. I thought about going into journalism, but couldn't pay off my student loans.
I know.
So if I had gone that path immediately, I'd be in debt right now.
Right.
Decided to go into finance instead so that I could pay them off, and then decided to pursue
Well, you
journalism.
and I have a few commonalities,
We
right?
do.
You were at Bank of America, you were at Citigroup, me too.
And now you're an entrepreneur.
And now I'm an entrepreneur.
Why get into that business?
How long do we have? Because I didn't mean to. Because when I saw that in this country, the retirement savings crisis is really a woman's crisis, because we live longer than men by 5+ years, because we retire with less money than men, in part because we don't invest to the same extent that men do, and it cost us, some women, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, some women, millions of dollars over the course of their careers. When I saw this and said, wait a second, the business I was in, investing Wall Street, is not serving women well, so I went to the big banks and said, here's the opportunity, I'll help you. I'll help you for free. I'll help you. And one of the gentlemen said to me after I said, women have got plenty of money, they're just not investing it, $5 trillion of investable assets. 90% of women manage their money on their own at some point in their lives. And this gentleman said back to me about a minute later, that sounds so interesting, Sallie. But don't their husbands manage their money for them? And I said, my gosh, he just didn't
This
hear
was
me.
recent?
Oh, this is a couple years ago. But this was his worldview. This is his life. This is the life of his friends. And so what I began to grasp is a reason the investing industry has not done as good a job for women. A reason we have the investing gap is because it is, they look to what women want refracted through the lens of a well-to-do Caucasian male. And that's a bit of what these firms have been offering, and it involves a lot of Chardonnay and talking about your emotions when it comes to money and making people feel good. And so finally, I had to do something. So it wasn't, I want to become an entrepreneur, let me find an idea. It was, here's a gap. If I'm not going to do something about it, I'm not sure who is. I'd better do something.
What I don't understand is there isn't a day that goes by where I don't receive an email about some sort of venture involving women and women investing and focusing on women investing. But yet we still have this problem where women are not taking control of their future.
Right.
When it comes to investing.
For all kinds of reasons. One reason is that we still sort of believe the old gender myths that we've crushed every place. That math is, guys are better at math. Not true. Guys are better at investing. Truly not true. That we're told we need more hand-holding. Okay, well, we're finding that's not true either. So we've got these gender myths that exist. Hell, heck,
You can say hell here.
The culture of the industry, beat the market, outperform, pick a winner. The symbol of the industry's a bull. On top of that, we truly underestimate the cost of waiting. So let me give you an example. You're a woman, you're doing well, you're earning $85,000 a year, you're a professional woman doing well. You're putting aside 20% of your income, which is a lot, but that's what experts say you need to for your long-term goals for retirement. You're putting it in the bank. And you say, you know what, I want to invest. Gosh, I got the carpool, I've got, this thing I got to do, I got this work project, I got this. Nothing's really speaking to me yet, I'm going to wait. And you wait. And by the way, I'm going to earn more later.
Or I'm just so busy, I don't have
so
time
busy.
to think about
the market
this.
feels too high, or whatever reason. I've heard them all. And you wait a decade, which is not unusual. You know how much that costs you a day? On average. Markets go up, markets go down. On average, $100. So, Rebecca, if you were to leave here, you pick up your purse, you would go down the hall, and $100 were to fall out. Would you, and the next day, another $100 were to fall out. And the next day, how long would it take you to fix your purse? Not very long. And so we get these messages, we underestimate the cost of waiting through good markets and bad markets. And so it's something that we put off. And the thing that we're trying to at Ellevest is we recognize through hundreds of hours of research with women that the way we think about money is not to make more money, but to reach our goals. So the question is, what do you want to do? You want to buy a house? You want to have some kids? You want to start a business? You want to retire well? And put together investment portfolios that get you there, rather than tell you to put together the investment portfolio for yourself.
How does it compare what you're doing, what you will be doing, to Betterment and Wealthfront and some of this new financial technology?
Well, and we are a financial technology company. So people call those digital advisors, they call them robo-advisors. We are one as well. But some of the differences are that we take into account issues that we women uniquely face. And it's not about pink flowers, right? And it's not about yoga and feeling good. It's about the fact that we live longer than men do. You better take that into account in your retirement planning. It's about the fact that sadly our salaries peak before men's do. We better take that into account too, because those things impact you getting to your goals. We tend to think about risk differently. So you ask a guy what his risk tolerance is, we have found they will answer it. Nobody knows what their risk tolerance is till we go through a financial crisis. I've seen, but the guys will answer it. The women will say, I'm going to go back and do some work and I'll get back to you. And so what we actually do at Ellevest is, rather than ask you how much risk you can take or want to take, we essentially tell you how much risk you can afford to take.
Based on the assessment of your overall financial picture.
And what you want to achieve. So our target is to get women to their goals or better in 70% of market environments. Why not 100%? That's called saving, not investing. And so we work to give women, because of their risk awareness, a higher chance of reaching their goals than other platforms out there do.
There are a lot of people out there now peddling personal finance, peddling ideas about how to save and be prepared for retirement. And some of their information, some of the things that they're claiming can actually be detrimental to people.
This is the problem. I was thinking about this recently. The regulators regulate so many things, but they don't regulate financial knowledge. What I would tell your viewers to do is look at the backgrounds of these individuals. What have they been doing? Where have they been doing it? How long have they been doing it? Because some of it, the advice is given, almost caused my head to explode, are people who are advising, and women in particular, if you have credit card debt outstanding, don't fully pay that off, put some money in the bank. So credit card debt costs you interest rates of 15%, 20% on up. Money in the bank, this emergency fund, yields close to zero. What? What? You should take that money in the emergency fund, pay this off immediately.
Because it's costing you money every day it sits there.
A fortune of money. And so, to me, that's almost the litmus test, that if a financial advisor is giving that advice, just run. I
also tell people, any advisor who tells you something is a sure thing.
Oh, gosh. No, nothing's a sure thing, right? Nothing is a sure thing. The markets have returned, over time, much better than sitting in a bank. But can I envision scenarios where it won't? Of course we can. Of course we can, which is why we have such an eye to risk awareness and risk management.
You also have a column in Fortune magazine where you write about women in business. And one of the columns that recently caught my eye was one about why women at the top stab other women in the back.
I know.
What do you think it is about, especially industries where there are not that many women, why the women at the top make it more difficult?
Of course.
In some cases, not in every case, but in some cases for the other women.
So what I want to start with, Rebecca, which is important, is this is changing. And this group of millennials coming up are saying, forget it. And even women in my generation are giving back to other women and beginning this conversation. So somehow organically it's changing. And I'm trying to help change it. And you see folks like Sheryl Sandberg, Anne-Marie Slaughter, who are giving this advice, are working to change it. The reason that I believe it happened, and I think the research indicates, is that if you're the only one up there, you got a seat at the table, you're doing well, you sort of know, and I sort of knew, you knew maybe there was going to be one other woman, maybe there was going to be a person of color, but it wasn't going to be half the table.
They think we've checked off the box, so we're good, or...
I don't even know that they would articulate it to themselves that way. It would be more, hey, look, we got to, hey, look at us. This is fantastic. Look at us. And gosh, I get to be with all of my pals and people I'm comfortable with, and I've got the diversity. And so if you were a woman in that position, if you weren't ready to step away from the table, if you're helping another woman get there, you've got risk to yourselves. I think that's one thing. I think also the research shows, and I sort of always intuitively knew this, that men in business who have helped or advocated for women or people of color have had their reputations enhanced. But women who've advocated for women, people of color, for people of color, have had their reputations somewhat diminished. And that it's a sense of, Rebecca's just pulling for Sallie because they're women, right? So you haven't been rewarded from it. And I'd say the third thing, and I thought this was such interesting research, is the research indicates that we as humans are really empathetic of individuals going through difficult times, unless we've been through the same thing ourselves.
I thought that was so interesting. You wrote about this in Fortune.
Fascinating.
And it's because it's the, oh, well, you know what, like, suck it up.
But I've even seen it with my daughter. My daughter, who is the sweetest young person I've ever met, goes through her junior year in high school. This is so hard, the SAT, the college thing is buried, blah, blah, blah. She becomes a senior. Her cousins go through the same thing. She's like, oh, come on, it's not that bad. I'm like, honey, wait a minute.
I know. We all think that in retrospect. We look back on all of the hardships and we think, well, it wasn't that bad in retrospect. I did it. When you look back on the hardships, the things that you have had to overcome in your life, what's one that really stands out as a moment that shaped and defined you?
Well, I think a very tough moment was during the financial crisis. And I was running Smith Barney at the time, and we had sold products to our clients that really the individuals there thought were low risk, thought that in a bad market would go down a handful of cents on the dollar. And obviously we had a bad market, and they went down almost all their cents on the dollar. And we were in this crisis, and things are popping, and I have a new boss. And I go to my new boss and said, look, we have messed this up. And the big print in the offering document said low risk, and the little print said you can lose all your money, and I think we should partially reimburse our clients. And my boss said no. And what? And so I thought, well, I just haven't made as good a case as I should for this. And so I went back and, well, but let me cut it this way. And he said no. I thought, well, you know what? He just doesn't, I'm just not communicating well, and it's going to hurt our business in the long term, and we really messed up, and we have an ethical obligation, and these people are going to be mad, and, while this will hurt our business short term, it'll be great long term. I went back again. He essentially stopped talking to me. And I kept sort of pounding because I just felt so strongly that we really owed these people something. And eventually the board became involved, and eventually this was debated at the board, and I won, and we partially reimbursed the clients, and I was fired for it some months later. And Rebecca, it was those moments when I was doing a job I loved. I mean, I was running Smith Barney, right? How did this happen to me? I love the financial advisors, I love the clients, And here I was, I could stop doing what I thought was right and keep my job, or I could keep going and lose my job without knowing it was going to turn out well. And so that was, the lose 10 pounds, not be able to go to sleep. But finally I did it. And I said, look, I'd rather live with myself and believe. And by the way, I might have been wrong.
How did you come to that decision? You have spent your life killing yourself for, probably working, not sleeping for lots of time, foregoing friendships, foregoing relationships that you cared about in order to get there. And the only thing you have to do in order to essentially maintain that job is go against your values and shut up.
And I'll tell you how I finally came to it, because, and of course we sit here today and in my mind now it's black and white. At the time it was gray because, by the way, the print did say that they could lose all their money. So it wasn't as black and white. And I'll tell you how I got to the conclusion. I've talked in the past about having a personal board of directors, those people that you can bounce ideas off of, that sort of give you insights to yourself. And I went to some group of them, some of whom were folks who were in the business and were involved in it, and asked them, what would you do if you were me? And I asked them why. And then I kept a list. What ended up showing up is everyone who said I should sit down and shut up was doing it because they were thinking about me. And everyone who said I should keep going did it because they were thinking about the clients. And it actually broke completely along those lines. And, I wrote down what they said. And I said, okay, you know what? This isn't about me. This has got to be about the clients. And so I kept going.
I worked for CNBC at the time. We were covering you. We were covering your business. Everybody, the light was shining on you very heavily.
One of the things that's going to play in my brain after I'm dead is watching on CNBC y'all reporting that I'd been fired before I was supposed to be out. So
did you know?
No, it was more like I knew, but I didn't know.
Right.
Like but you don't know. And I turn around and I'm watching. It might have been you.
I know.
Oh my gosh! On TV,
we're gonna have to go check this out.
Out and sitting and be like, "Wow, this is so weird." Because here I am, and there I am, and here I am, and oh my gosh! So.
And you were under massive amounts of scrutiny, and I'm sure that even there had to be, outside of just the ethical questions, there had to be the questions of doubt. Like, do you believe in yourself? Do you believe that you are 100% right on this thing?
And you can't, and you don't know. And if I do this, and then I had people tell me, Sallie, if you do this, you're never coming back. You're never coming back, because why would anybody hire you?
So how did you come back?
The one thing I keep front and center is, what are my kids going to think? How would I explain this to my children? And so a moment years later, I took my son out, young teenager at the time, for dinner, the two of us. We ran into Dick Fold, who ran Lehman Brothers. Dick is having dinner with his daughter, and as my son and I say hello, we leave the table, I say, Jonathan, that was, thinking great teachable moment, that was Dick Fold, and Dick Fold was the CEO of Lehman. And Jonathan, you don't have to tell me who he is. He took down Lehman Brothers. Like, what? He took down Lehman Brothers. He should be in jail. He shouldn't be out at a restaurant. And of course, Rebecca, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, we're not talking about these things at home. Does he, what? And I said, sweetie, you know what I do, right? And he said, oh, mommy, of course I do. I Googled you. You're one of the good guys. And so that moment of, how will I explain it to my children? What will my children think if, in this case, they could read about it? In other cases, if they were able to read about it, how would you have that discussion? And how can you look yourself? It's not looking yourself in the mirror; it's looking in your child's eyes.
I have a group of people that I think about in my life. There's a professor in the mix. There's a mentor who was a really strong mentor to me as a child, and then even my parents. I think about them in my list of people when I think about choices that I'm about to make. I'm not even asking them. I'm just purely thinking, well, how would they perceive this thing that I'm about to do right now? So
exactly.
And it really does help.
It helps.
Yeah.
It helps.
So what did you do to build yourself back up again after this?
I drank a lot of wine.
What was your wine preference?
Chardonnay. I mean, a lot of people said you're not coming back. I actually had a executive search person I called.
Did you believe that you weren't coming back?
I never believed I wasn't coming back. Even though, I mean, not like a junior executive search person, a guy who runs an executive search firm.
And he said, you're done.
He said, you're done. He said, you'll get some you'll get, people will call you, and you'll be on a slate because you're a woman, but you're never going to get the job because you're a troublemaker. You stepped out of line. The great thing about this country, the great thing about this economy is there are non-traditional opportunities now in a way there just weren't 15 and 20 years ago. People have the opportunity to start their own business in a way we just couldn't. So what I believed was that I am driven enough, neurotic enough, mission-driven enough, insecure enough, energetic enough, that if I couldn't be successful in that way, that I would find a different way and a different path. And as the economy changes, that's happened.